It's
Like,
coming. We had a great
right,
show. It was so
such
happy. It
a
was
good
joyous.
show. Nate Tice, we welcomed him in, a friend / foe of Debatable. You should know him. He is really, really fun to talk to. There's that word again. Kevin Clark, you know him. Weird haircut, does a lot of weird stuff
It's
with
not
his
weird.
face,
It's
but,
just,
also fun. Also fun.
you know
But
what
the
was not fun?
reason we have to say those words is because we worry that we're going to lose the people who are into fun, because we have to do the thing where I can feel the register of our voices changing already, Dominique. And I want to avoid sanctimony. I want to avoid
Yeah.
being annoyed at ourselves when this comes out in the morning. But obviously, we're here to talk about Tua. Like, that is the game. The game. Screw the game, right? Like,
Yeah.
there's some stuff that it was interesting. I get it, but you said you had a notebook of thoughts when we were texting about this when it happened. I don't know what's in that notebook, if you actually have a notebook, but I do want your thoughts just to start here. Like, where did you go?
That was a text misunderstanding. I had a notebook of X's and O's thoughts, like breaking down the game that I realized I don't care about anymore. Like after what we saw happen to Tua,
Even
like it
better.
felt like it was a waste of time going into like how they were disguising their cover two and what was the answer to the Tyreek Hill dilemma. Like none of that matters because the game stopped. The crowd was chanting to his name as he was getting his face mask removed, and all his teammates were standing around him because his body tensed up as a reaction to what seemed obviously to be a brain injury on the heels of
Right.
a shortened week where he had what we all assumed was another concussion.
4 days ago.
Yeah, which they said to us was a back injury. Um, it sucks, man. It's so like there's a bunch of different ways to go. We can go to the point of like having to restart and play. Like those are experiences that I've had that I talked about earlier in this week.
Right.
Honestly,
No, we
we,
did that. We did the conversation where you took us on a tour of literal death through football. That
sad.
happened. But even still, Dominique, I will admit to this. I think we should start here, is that the whole concussion controversy feels very like 5 years ago, right?
Yeah.
Like, we talked about this a lot. There was the whole, I mean, pick your sort of cultural inflection point where it felt like, wow, we really care about concussions. But now we kind of, I think, just are not just numb to it, but I feel like something else happened, right? I was trying to think of why it felt like, to me, this is a throwback story. I think for me, I just kind of came truly like to terms with the idea that this is consensual brain damage.
Yeah.
I watch boxing. I watch football. I love watching boxing. I love watching football. I think I just chalked it up to the idea that now we seem to know the risks. The people, more importantly, who do the sport seem to know the risks. And I kind of shut my brain off more than I think I probably realized.
So to be fair, or at least transparent, is these big ugly occurrences are difficult to deal with. However, the like repetitive subconcussive episodes are also risky. So like
Yes,
these
yes.
big, or not risky, but like dangerous, which I guess is a minor distinction, but I I think it's important. So like these big knockout blows like this that watch us or have us watching guys with their muscles tensed up.
Right.
Um,
Fingers in the fencing position, as it's
yeah,
called,
I
as
mean
we learned.
it reminds us how far we've come as a society and how we think about this, but how we haven't really come very far at all because we really love this stuff. Because I can go back to like my early in my career, we still laughed. Like to be completely honest with you, like we called that the PlayStation hands. When people got
Mm.
knocked out, we would laugh at that and like
This is a
make
thing that
jokes.
you
Yeah,
recognized from
yeah.
jokes. I did not know
Yeah.
that.
No, I mean it goes back to the jacked up era and all that stuff when we like celebrated guys getting hit. That
Right,
was
right,
not that
right.
long ago. And now it feels disgusting to have been a part of it, but it hasn't changed that much. I mean, the game has gotten somewhat, I mean, it's gotten somewhat safer, but when we have what happened, I can't imagine a situation that the NFL wanted to happen less than have a high profile situation that appeared to be circumventing the concussion protocol, and then have the very next primetime game. Well, I guess it wasn't the
Yep.
next primetime game. We had a Monday night game. But the next time this player played happened to be in a primetime Thursday situation.
Yeah, soon
we
as
have
possible,
Friday to
biggest
talk
possible
about it. Yeah,
platform.
we got Saturday to talk about it until we get to Sunday. And in that game, that player again hits his head in the ugliest fashion possible, has his face mask removed and put on a stretcher and taken out of the stadium. It's hard to watch, but we all watched it and we kept watching the game. And that like kind of feels like we want to be all sanctimonious, but also like we knew what it was when we signed up, and we didn't turn it off.
Right. I mean, look, this is where the sanctimony thing, it's sort of like, look, if you want to object to the playing of football as a concept and go to that part of the argument, like, I don't really have a good objection to that. If you're consistent across that and you find this gross, I get it. But the idea that this is somehow a unique tipping point, Domonique, let's discuss why it feels explosive. And I think it's not because of a revelation about head trauma in any way. It's that now there is, I think, a number of parties that could be blamed. And this is where I'm also fascinated as to just your vantage point as like the guy who was the president of the Players Union. We talk about this all the time. I know it feels like a hobby horse, but I thought of you immediately. And I was like, what would it be like if I was running the union and I tried to get this investigation into the concussion protocol? And clearly, let's just be honest about this too, like Tua isn't trying to get the Dolphins in trouble. He wanted to play. He wants to play. He's apparently on a plane en route to the plane to fly back with the team. Like, the team obviously doesn't want to get in trouble. Like, the NFL doesn't want to get in trouble for those reasons. And so you have this conversation where, will someone get in trouble?
It's a really difficult role to be in, where you have to protect players that often don't want that protection. And when you have to protect them by penalizing their employer, which also penalizes them, it's a bad spot to be in. It's an impossible place to be. I do think it's a job that has to be done by somebody. And if you're going to be hated for doing it, then at least you know that, or at least you feel like you're doing the right thing. But in this particular situation, it's going to be interesting how the league reacts to this, how everyone reacts to this, because no one wants to be on the wrong side of this now. Like before, it felt like you could blame the Dolphins, or you could blame their training staff, or you could punish them. Now everybody is complicit, with the exception of the union. Everybody's complicit. The players, or the player in this situation, the doctors, the team, and the league. Everybody's complicit in this very, very ugly episode that we're all going to remember this game for. Even though, have we even talked about who won? Does it matter at this point?
I don't. No. I'm pretty sure it was the Bengals, but more interesting to me is the fact that Chris Nowinski, who has become this figure, of course, is advocate on behalf of caring about concussions in ways that have been, you know, very, very vocal and very adversarial. He basically predicted all of this. You know, if this happens, then why should happen? And results in lawsuits and firings. I mean, this is where, Dominique, like, we have the benefit of hindsight now, and I think it's really telling what we all felt about this without the benefit of hindsight. Because what this was a rolling of the dice, right? Like, I'll be honest here. I was curious about the story. I'm curious about the doctor who cleared him and the independence of that doctor. I'm curious about whether there could ever be a doctor working for a team who is not inherently betraying the oath that any doctor takes, which is to, first and foremost, do no harm. And here, that's not the job.
It's supposed to be an independent doctor. Like, we've always talked, like, within the league, it's kind of understood that you understand that the team doctors have some biases. It's a terrible place to be. It's a sad thing. Like, we negotiated for like the right to second and third opinions, but when you're playing on the team, as I was in the past, you don't want those. You want the opinion that gets you back on the field as soon as possible.
Yes.
So I'm not even sure that helps, but it's a terrible spot to be in when the independent doctor comes to the conclusion that a player can go back out on the field. And I guess we have to reserve some room for the idea that it was a back injury. And that
we don't know. I mean, what we have though, Dominique, what we have though, even though we don't have the evidence that says this is a head injury is we have video. And this is where it's just sort of like, this is viscerally damning, right? Like you can argue about this, but you're not going to convince people that this wasn't a head trauma, especially now that everybody's incentivized to be on the right side of this.
I
Even
don't
though we all
know
made the
what it looks
bets
like.
beforehand, that was different.
I don't know what it looks like. I don't know how it looks any different if it's not. You know, like, all right, we're not at all doctors, but like that's there are very few injuries that causes that type of physical reaction. Now, I'm going back to the Bills game now. There are very few injuries that cause that reaction. By very few, I mean I've never seen one that wasn't a head injury that somebody was wobbly and lost their balance and kind of went back down to their knees and got back up. Like that's a thing that I mean, again,
not
a medical professional,
clear his head,
been around a lot of football, watched a lot of boxing, watched some MMA, and that like physiological response is one that, for me at least, is consistent with head trauma. And we also know that once you have a concussion like that, you are then at higher risk for increased damage if it happens again in a short period of time. So I talked to some people at the NFLPA, and they said that obviously the investigation is ongoing. I asked if this was a regular week, would they have completed the investigation before Sunday? They didn't have much of a response from me. It's like, I don't know, maybe, but I guess I don't know what the response would have been. Like if they finished the investigation on Friday and determined that that they circumvented the concussion protocol, do they then have the ability to swoop in and force Tua to go through the protocol on a Friday or a Saturday when it's a game week? Who knows what actually happens in that situation, but the investigation's ongoing. This shortened week obviously makes it look worse. And so the shortened week is always something. The shortened week and the extra game has always been something that we fought against. And and the union and negotiations didn't have the power to do much about it, in part because it was a minor issue that seemed like it would come with a lot of increased revenue, and it wasn't worth us fighting for or missing games.
Literal cost benefit analysis. Money versus risk.
Then when we see things like this, I imagine that the league wishes they had done something differently. Like you could have the bye week before.
Do you think they wish something differently? I mean, like, 'cause Domonique, like, this is where again, with the glasses of hindsight, right? Like, I'm trying not to be sanctimonious, over the top, etc. And that also leads me to think, like, I don't know how worried they are. I feel like they're more worried. If I'm being super cynical, and this is just me projecting here, I would be more concerned with the theater of concern than actually doing anything, right?
I think you're right.
It's because we got a jib shot. We got a jib shot of Tua exiting the field on a stretcher. Like it felt like David O. Russell cinematography, and I'm just like, I don't know why actually I do know why we're getting this, and it's because ultimately, like, this is just part of the show, and it's not going to stop people from watching said show. And I don't know if it should. That's the next step of this, right? Like, so Dominique, I guess the question here before we get to the actual fun that we're really so apologetic about delaying is what do you think about or do differently because you saw this tonight?
Nothing. Like, we're gonna watch on Sunday and can't wait for the witching hour, in which case the NFL knows they are bulletproof. They have to figure out how to endure whatever conversation is going to happen tomorrow, because this conversation will not continue into the following week, because on Monday we're going to talk about the Sunday results, and then we're going to start preparing for the Thursday night game. The only way this becomes a bigger thing is if we have another primetime game where someone is gruesomely knocked out. It sucks, but it's true. And I don't know. I feel like when I was coming up, we didn't know about these things. Like the concussion, I guess it was 2007, 2008, when the Bennett Amalu and Alan, I think it was Alan Schwartz.
Alan Sills.
No,
Alan Schwartz, the New York Times writer.
New York Times, Alan Schwartz piece that opened our eyes to it. I was already in the NFL by that point. So this feels like a different generation, and some people who want to protect themselves of the guilt that comes with watching this can be like they knew what they were getting themselves into in a way that we didn't know we were getting ourselves into. And it it still none of it ever really feels right. There's no way to like absolve yourself from this. Like even
No.
in boxing and MMA, like you do it and then you don't do it again for like 6 months at the latest.
Well, that's the thing about the 2 concussions in 2 days, which could be career ending, right? According to like scientific protocols. Seriously, like don't do this anymore if your brain has been hit after already been destabilized and having not healed. And so you're describing again a sport. I mean, you said a couple of things that I just let roll by, but I don't want to, right? You said you had to negotiate for second and third opinions as players.
Yeah.
That's nuts. Just as a concept, that's nuts, right? That's not medically sound. You talked about how, again, of course, an extra game was essentially in the end a foregone conclusion because of the finances. Well, I get that. But I guess where I'm left with is just the sense that I guess I just want us all to be very okay with publicly declaring that, yeah, we just feel gross. Like that's all we can do. Like this is the trade-off. It's like people who want to argue, like, stop eating meat. Like, I don't have a good counter argument if you're consistent with those principles. And now I'm just going to have to feel gross as a consequence. So this is where we invite on a new friend of Debatable, who I like to think is a challenger for football analyst, absolutely more impressive than Domonique Foxworth, Nate Tice of The Athletic. Hello.
How do you give him friend status already? It's his first
friend
appearance.
status, and
he's not a FOD yet. He's making a first appearance.
He's
friend
threatened,
status.
Nate. Domonique is threatened already.
And you also gave me foe status already, so I got friend and foe, like just got both cornered off already. Like just
foe of Debatable. Domonique sees you as.
Before we get to the analysis part, the most important thing we need to discuss is what is your first name and how did you decide, or when did you decide to go with Nate?
Oh, good question.
I mean, this is very Hackett related, and I need to get to the bottom of this.
I'm Nathan. I'm Nathan. So, just Nathan.
Wait,
Nathan.
not all Nathans are Nathaniels. Correct. You're telling us.
Yes, correct.
Did not know this.
Nathan Jack Tice, but Nate Jack Tice because my parents paid by the letter. Apparently, when they named me.
Is that one of those like cocktail party lines that you use every time you meet somebody?
Every single time.
That's a good one. I love those. That's such a dad move.
But wait, I like the idea that former Vikings head coach Mike Tice is really concerned about his son's Scantron bubbles. He's like, look, we're not going to fit this all in here if we go with Nathaniel.
Got to start that SAT. Something. You got to get it going. So you got to let's make this, knock it out quick. No. Well, then my parents' first date was Rocky. So my sister's named Adrian. Great, sweet, has a sentimental meaning.
That's cute.
Mine was just they were walking through New York and they're like, "Oh, Nathan's Hot Dogs. That would be a good name." And that's a true story.
You named after
I'm named after, more or less named after Nathan's Hot Dogs. They're like, "Oh, Nathan's a good name. Nathan Tice, yeah, that's a good name." So my sister's got all the sentimental value, and then I'm just the throw in, just whatever.
That is how people think Americans come up with names.
Yeah.
You watch Rocky, you walk by a hot dog, and you're like, "There we go."
So American.
It is.
Are we stressing out Alabaster yet?
Isn't that what Bruce Willis's character says in Pulp Fiction? He's like, "Our names don't mean shit, honey." He's like, "It's like I'm American. Our names don't mean shit." That's exactly what my name is.
I was gonna think of what's the worst Bruce Willis movie for your parents to have seen while naming your sister, but we can ponder that as we get into some football.
Perfect.
All right, guys, let's start with the game of the weekend. 2 fascinating offenses, and I want to know whose offense do you have more confidence in on Sunday, the Bills or the Ravens?
We're doing the Bills like this, huh?
Pablo, you were surprised that we put the Bills in this category? I guess, are you surprised that we lowered the Bills to the Ravens? Are you surprised that we raised the Ravens to the Bills? Because I don't think it's that ridiculous a question, wondering which one of these offenses, I mean, considering what Lamar Jackson and the Ravens offense have done so far this season, I think the right answer is probably the Bills, but I think it's a legitimate question because Lamar might just go off, I guess you can't call it going off if you're constantly in a state of offness.
Constantly off. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, hope he don't go on because that could get scary.
So Lamar, who has accounted for more offensive touchdowns on his own team, 12, than 30 of 32 NFL teams, to Dominique's point, yes, is somebody to reckon with. I suppose the idea, though, is simply that this is now an active conversation, right? Like we had just said that Josh Allen is doing things we had never really seen before, that this Bills offense was doing things that were cuts above And now after the weather that, felled various referees and actual NFL players, we're saying that actually we can learn things from that. That shows why, Domonique, they have dropped a bit.
So their offense was obviously very effective in that game and moving up and down the field, but they didn't score a bunch of points because I think Allen had 400 yards. They had over 500 passing. But in watching the game, and I'll be interested to hear what Nathan has to say about this, is like Joshua had a lot of great plays, but he had a lot of weird ones that felt like old school Joshua, where he was like trying to do too much. Like that spike before halftime that almost ended up, the fake spike that almost ended up pick 6. He hit Xavier Howard with an interception. He hit a couple other people with interception. He gave up sack fumbles. But he also did incredible things like juke oncoming blitzers and run people over. So like the combination of the Josh Allen experience was interesting in the last game, to say the least. So the one thing I would say about the Ravens is the concern is that pass rush that the Bills have, like Von Miller and all them, what they're going to do against a third string left tackle, that could be worrisome if you're Lamar Jackson.
Well, that's what, like, I've called Joshua Allen, because we're going full names on this show. Joshua Allen is like Professor Chaos from South Park. Like, that's what he is. He's chaos at quarterback, and that's what he is. It really reminds me of that Bills offense, because like they're terrible at running the ball, and I mean, just awful. The offensive line's holy, and I'm just using all my dad jokes. Not holy like in a biblical sense, but holy like cheese.
Keep it going.
Yeah, but it's a lot like
again, so many jokes that I'm not going to say, but please continue.
Okay, I will. Yeah, no, just put a pin in it, and but no,
or don't actually. That would hurt.
Yeah.
Goodness, Pablo.
But this run game is just so terrible that it's kind of like they are just giving Josh Allen a break. Like they're just kind of going, okay, let him catch a breath. It's like LeBron with Mo Williams, like like going.
All right, okay, your possession.
Just kick it to Mo. All right, here we go. Whew, let me catch my breath. All right, let's play D. Like that's exactly what that offense feels like. And no, but he did have some near misses, but it's all him. I mean, it really is. Like they're missing all these blitzes that the Dolphins they can't pick up a single blitz, and he's just like, all right, I'm going to make 3 guys miss and run it down. Or I think you guys had the stat too. He had the most dropbacks in like on recorded history, 71 dropbacks, which is just ridiculous. They can't win that way. Yeah, perfect. Look at that, tied in right there. But I can't believe I'm saying this. Is I trust Greg Roman more right now than this Bills offense, because I think Lamar is playing fantastic football.
They do also have the opportunity or the benefit of going against this Ravens defense, which has been incredibly uneven. So we'll see what happens there. So I mean, that I think that's more the reason why I would go with the Bills than I would go with the Ravens. And obviously the Bills defense is dealing with some injuries, but they're getting healthier. But the weaknesses of their defense, the Ravens are not really a team that attacks the corners, which is what I've been waiting for someone to manage to do to this Bills offense, and we haven't seen it happen yet.
So I have a question about Lamar and just like what we're learning about him now, because the team around him, right? Well, if your cat wants to show up, Lamar is Dominique's son's cat, Nate, if you're familiar. Awesome. Declan's cat. But I know your son's name.
Congratulations.
I'm a good fan. So the idea that the Ravens have
name an offensive lineman, then I'll be impressed.
I'm just gonna keep laughing and hope that people forget the question that you asked. I don't know any of them.
Stall.
But the team around Lamar Jackson now, right? What are we learning about Lamar, given that, it's less historically injured now, I guess, the team overall, but also, he's got some of the stuff he needs back.
Yeah. I mean, the Rashad Bateman stepping up and being a very good player. They're using him different than I thought how Rashad Bateman would be used. Like, he's being a deep threat. And when he came out of Minnesota, I loved him as a route runner. And it's this weird offense that they're trying to be under center more. Like, this is the most Lamar has ever been under center since he's been a starter. This is the most times he's ever thrown from the pocket. And this is the least amount of times he's scrambled, refused. I don't know which word. You're the Harvard grad and Maryland grad. You can correct me there. But
the difference is Maryland, we are like functionally intelligent, whereas like the intelligence we have is actually useful. And Harvard is like, we can reference Thoreau. Like, what good is that? Like
Right?
we can work Thoreau into a conversation. Thanks,
Yeah,
guys.
That's right. Last year was a real Walden Pond experience for Lamar Jackson.
There you
Just
go.
alone contemplating his existence.
That's the needle.
Anyway.
That's the needle mover of a references right there. No, but it's Lamar the pocket passer, and he's awesome right now. It's Thor remembering he's the god of thunder, not the god of hammers. Like it's like he is so good not only with his legs, but it's just right now as just truly as an operator from the pocket. Like against the Dolphins, it was so cool. He's progressing and he's doing all the fun stuff. So it's really cool to see this guy like truly take a leap forward as being like a true quarterback, which we know he's done. He can do. He won freaking MVP, not just by mistake, but it's cool to see it all come together like in front of our eyes.
You have 5 kids or 10 kids, because the dad jokes, the dad humor falling from your lips, man. It is outstanding.
I knew I was on ESPN, and this is, hey, tied in. Disney owns Marvel. Hey, let's keep it all in the family.
Nate is the god of dads.
He is. Not the god of hammers, the god of thunder. Man, you are killing.
That's it.
Everybody.
That's all I got.
At the neighborhood cookout, everybody's in polos with their shirts tucked into their shorts. You got them cackling right by the grill.
A lot of Mick Ultras, like a lot of
like, hey, you catch that episode of Law and Order last night? You guys chatting about
SVU or the original? That's
SVU is a little too new for me. Yeah.
Man, goodness gracious. Playmakers, they have them in Baltimore. They haven't had them before. And the weapons, like even Duvernay is playing in a way that I didn't think he was capable of. Being able to track the ball deep over his shoulder. Like I always thought of him as like a return guy who can threaten you, but he's like making plays. And Andrews, he's Lamar's favorite target. So even without the running backs being as productive, having receivers that can take some of the pressure off Lamar is, it's scary to think that there are other people who can break a defense on that team other than Lamar.
Alabaster wants in. Why?
Well,
Why?
I have one follow-up question about the Ravens weapons before we move on. I think so when the Marquise Brown trade happened over the offseason, people were like, great value, but Lamar needs playmakers. He needs a deep threat. This is where he thrives, driving the ball down the field. How not effective was that guy? Because they haven't missed him at all. How have they replaced that with better playmakers in that same role?
Hollywood's overrated. It's that, and just also how they use him is like he's a niche player. Like he is a slot vertical player.
I like that as a burn. I like that. He is a niche, not a slot receiver or whatever. Like he's a niche. He's like a movie you don't want to see, but some people respect.
In soccer they call it like a luxury player. Like that's what he is. It's like you don't build around it, but if you can have the other pieces, we'll drop him in. That's kind of the cherry on top, but you don't build an offense around him. And Rashad Bateman's a stud. I really do think he's one of my favorite players when he was coming out. But I think he's just a better player, and so it's just an opportunity. It's like, hey, let's have this guy shoot the shot as opposed to the other guy shoot the shot. Like I think that's just the term to use it for. Yeah,
I didn't know that that people outside of the Ravens fan group thought highly of Hollywood, because inside the Ravens bubble, I guess, that I occasionally enter, Hollywood is not highly regarded. People didn't love him. They weren't sad to see him go. Lamar seemed to not like it, and that's the only thing that upset fans, is that you upset Lamar. So I don't think anyone who follows the Ravens is surprised that they don't miss Hollywood Brown.
Some loose ends here. Juwan James.
You named the lineman.
There's a lineman.
Way to Google.
Thank you, Google.
Way to Google.
Yeah,
Google.
Nope. And also a diehard, I think.
I didn't want to put you on the spot for a team. I just meant any offensive lineman.
Just in the world.
Free or Die Hard would have been mine. I think that's what I'm going with.
Hans Gruber Tice is something we're glad to have avoided.
Jeez. Just call me a terrorist.
Pablo will do that from time to time. All right, let's move on. This is a game that I find fascinating. Eagles-Jaguars this weekend. These are two emergent teams, obviously at different stages in their progression. But my question, after the first 3 weeks, people think of this Eagles team as a real Super Bowl threat, and have we crowned the Eagles too early?
So we're in week 3. Is that what we're in?
4.
Entering
We're in 4. Sorry. Yeah, thank you, Alabaster Hand. So 4 weeks in, or 3 weeks in, about to be the 4th. And what's the line on this game? Because the line on this game, Alabaster, in which
6.5.
we're favoring the Eagles by 6.5 against a team that metrically is a lot closer than that would suggest. Yeah, I'm generally just staggered that we're at a place where Jaguars-Eagles is the second most interesting game we're going to watch this weekend.
I'm not staggered by it at all. I don't know. Let's take a moment to appreciate all the things that I was right about in my preseason predictions. One of them was the Jaguars were going to surprise some people. Nice arbitrary projection that feels good. The other one was the Eagles will represent the NFC in the Super Bowl. And boy, am I feeling good about that right now. I know the season is long, but yeah, I'm not surprised by this at all. There's overkill on the adult in the room exiting or entering and leaving Urban Meyer out. Like, I don't think that's there's much more meat on that bone, although it's the easiest way to explain this. But they play really well up front on D, which I don't know. I guess maybe Urban Meyer was out there kicking kickers and not motivating his front 7 to play good ball. And that's a difference of it. And Trevor Lawrence is really good, guys. He's really talented. And if you give him simple concepts to operate, he's going to operate them well. And when shit breaks down, he's good enough to make something out of nothing.
Yeah.
So the Trevor Lawrence thing, like, is it the absence of Urban Meyer's attempt to use him? Like, again, the schemes that Dominique's referring to, or is it just natural evolution, a year older? Why are we seeing this version of him?
Not having to throw go balls to Laquan Treadwell really helps. Like, and like a converted corner as your number 2 target, like, and Tavon Austin catching backline digs like at 5'7", like that improvement, just going regression to the mean as far as everybody else around him. I mean, Urban Meyer, I know that is so funny. I'm glad Dominique said that, is that the two things is everyone's just gone, oh, Urban Meyer's gone, of course they're better. It's like, well, they improved elsewhere. They're actually using these guys. And also it's that I feel crazy in saying that the former number 1 pick, that's generational talent, actually turned out to be good. Like, I felt crazy for 6 months. People were going, did you see his stat lines? And it was like, he had the sexiest 170 yards I've ever seen, like last year. When you watch Trevor Lawrence,
those drops.
You're just like, oh man, I know. It was great process, terrible results. Like, the Rotten Tomato score is terrible, but hey, this guy's going to figure it out. Like, he's going to be okay.
Fans love it.
Yeah, but I'm loving it. I think, like Dominique said, is just like they're not doing anything crazy. Like, Doug Peterson's just running kind of staple NFL concepts, and then just Trevor Lawrence is a machine. And on top of it, he's like 6'6" and runs a 4.5. Like, he's a superhuman. Like, watching him in the pocket's so cool.
Yeah, you don't need to be an extra innovative coach when you got a guy that's really good at football. You don't want to complicate it.
But I do want to continue the superhero motif here, right? Like, what is his superpower? Because Nate was describing the experience of watching him in the pocket and why that felt almost erotic is what it came across as.
That's
so
what it is.
Why?
He processes and moves in the pocket. Like, you see so many young guys, including the guy that he's playing against this week, Jalen Hurts. He doesn't bail from the pocket. He's trying to operate and go 1 to 2 to 3 with his progressions, while also making 3 guys miss and step up and keep his eyes downfield. And then when it does break down, he can run. Like, it's so you got a superhuman, but that's also a great athlete. Like, he's like his sack rates, his like how many times he gets pressured, how many times he gets sacked is crazy, because he avoids everything and gets the ball out. So he's just a super processor on top of being a great athlete.
A pocket rocket is what you're describing.
Goodness.
I'm trying to think of a good one. I don't know what would be a good one.
Superhuman
Rocket Raccoon? Is that what we're calling?
Is there? So you said he was a superhuman and a great athlete. Yeah. So who's the superhuman who's not a great athlete? We talking
supercomputer?
Professor X? Oh no, second time you said supercomputer, first time you said superhuman.
Okay.
So I think Professor X probably.
Professor X?
Tom Brady.
Wow.
Tom Brady. I don't know.
Young Professor X. I don't know. The Blob. Not a great. Well, he's pretty explosive for all that weight.
Shout out to the Blob. When are we gonna get the Blob? I feel
like
they never make him fat enough. That's the thing. It's like, you want the Blob to really be the Blob.
They didn't wasn't that Wolverine Origins movie that was god awful? Yeah. They tried to make
not blobby enough.
Not blobby enough. I know. And then they made the Juggernaut as like a Cockney rhyming slang.
That angered me.
That's so bad.
All right. You guys might not like this, but I'm going to drag us back to the game. The question was about the Eagles, and you guys have done a great job talking about Trevor Lawrence. But what do you attribute this rapid growth of this Eagles team to be? Is it just Jalen Hurts? How are they so good? If they win this game, they could legitimately go on a run to be 9-0.
Well, the Jalen Hurts thing, Domonique, right? Like, there is a case right now that this is your MVP favorite, right? Like, if you were to do the power poll right now. So how do you assess that case as somebody who bought stock in this team before the season?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I've done this a number of times on this platform and others. It's like he's gotten better in the one area that he needed to improve in, and that was passing from the pocket, which again, I guess is two areas, and passing against zone. Like those things he's done a lot better, and those were the things that you would do against him to stop him. Because of his athleticism, you don't want to be in man coverage against him. And so if he can't beat zone, he's a kind of wholly ineffective quarterback when it comes to like playing against tough teams. So he's addressed both of those concerns, and they're much better because of it. And I guess you can kind of downgrade him in that team based on the talent, but it kind of gets frustrating when you hear that because this is not college. Like everybody out there is really freaking good. And the worst team in the NFL, if you're beating those bad teams and like handily, like I don't know what else you want them to do, which is what they're doing.
Yeah. I mean, they played Jared Goff, Cousins, and Carson Wentz, and they made him look like Jared Goff, Cousins, and Carson Wentz. That's the defense. So, like, it's like, okay, that's what you want, like, right? And I'm trying to like kind of rein back in, kind of like the Eagles, like Super Bowl and stuff, but they're really good. They are good. But this, I think,
so deep too.
Yeah, and this is the best. Their offensive line is ridiculously good, but and even what Domonique said was that you can't run man against them. They also have awesome weapons. Like you have AJ Brown, Devontae Smith, and Dallas Goedert. And so if you run single high against this team, they'll crush you. And then if you go too high against them, they'll just do all the QB run stuff. And he's very good as a runner. So he's only had 12 passing attempts so far when the Eagles have been trailing this entire year. Like they've gotten a very favorable game scripts in every game, which speaks to how well they're playing. But I do want to see him when they get punched in the mouth a little bit and see how he can just sit and drop back. He always wants to bail to the right, which I get, he's right-handed, but I want to see that Bucs playoff game is still burned into my brain when Todd Bowles just kept blitzing him from the right to flush him out to the left and he looked like crap. So I want to see a team do that against him. And I think this Jags defense can do it surprisingly, which I think is going to be really fun.
So the Eagles averaging 8.5 yards per passing play, the most in the NFL. Alabaster has helpfully for the podcast audience laid down a card. The Eagles allowing 4.1 yards per passing play, the fewest in the NFL. We want to talk about the O-line here. Are we bored by that? Can I throw out some names that establish some credibility that I may or may not have Googled just now? What are we doing, Domonique? In terms of why the Eagles are special?
The O-line is really important. I wanted to go more than just the O-line is like team-wide. The depth is incredible. And injuries are like as integral to football as anything is to any other sport because they're like inevitable in a way that they aren't anywhere else. So you kind of have to plan for them, even though you don't know where they're going to be. But this team is as prepared as anyone for them because they have 2 number 1 corners. They got 2 like all NFL type tackles. The defensive line is low. They've already lost 1 defensive lineman, but it doesn't matter because they got so many great defensive linemen. They brought in Chauncey Gardner-Johnson to support the secondary. Like this team just has so many talented guys. They have 2 receivers that I think are capable of being number 1 threats. Like that's what it boils down to. Like I tend to want to give more credit to players in most situations, but in this one, you also got to look at Howie Roseman and how they built this team. It's really, really impressive, and it's hard to argue that anybody is better than from a position by position talent basis.
So they are in your, this is a thing that you are on these days. You are in on, despite all of your pro player bias, you are in on identifying the institutions that actually impress
that's my
you
thing right now.
The
For
culture.
now, that's my thing.
Yeah.
I need to get off of that. It's not.
Yeah,
fun.
I was gonna say, like, are you aware that this is
that.
your thing now?
Yeah.
Are you aware that you're now
He's
the man praising the men?
He's the president of the GM Association. That's
God. It's in the back of my head. I've been aware of it for a while, which is why I always preface it with an apology, which draws more attention to it. I need to stop.
That's what just happened.
Yeah, just
how it stinks. It's all Jalen Hurts putting him on his back.
Jimmy's and Joe's. That's what it's about.
Howard.
Howard. Yeah, we're going full name. It's a full name pod. No, I get it though. It's as long as you just don't look at the linebacker position, and then that as long as you just wave that away, which apparently doesn't matter anymore. Even though you watch all these teams run too high, and it's like, oh, actually, it does matter. Yeah. So we'll see. I want to see this matchup because I think the Jaguars match up a lot better with them than people are expecting.
Why is Russell Wilson on the menu? Do we have to talk about him?
No idea.
Do you expect Russell Wilson and the Broncos offense to get going against the winless Raiders?
So we're learning a couple of things about Nate here, Domonique, as we also continue to realize the power of edited graphics. If we can create a graphic of Nate Tice's brain in which the Eagles-Bucs playoff game is apparently burned. And also...
We don't have the brain graphic on a card, but we do have this hot dog.
I love it.
That's fast work, though. That's fast work.
I'm sending that to my family.
Delicious.
I'm sending that to my parents. I made it, Mom. I made it.
Alongside Jalen Hurts somewhere in that noggin full of unidentified meats is also Russell Wilson for reasons I'm now only beginning to appreciate. So why?
Well, I backed him up at Wisconsin. That's my claim to fame. So we played the 1 year at Wisconsin together.
I did not know this.
Yeah.
So okay. Here, first question.
Yeah.
As weird as we think.
Yeah. Yeah. That's exactly it. It's been cranked up a little bit more. It's put it this way. I got invited to the first wedding. I did not get invited to the second wedding. So that'll speak to our relationship at this point in time. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's it.
We care a lot, except about Nate at our cooler wedding. Yeah.
The joke I've said is that this is what was the dinner party joke.
I love it. I can't wait.
Once you realize Russ's goal is to be the president of the United States, everything he does makes sense.
Oh my God. I need a second to just process.
Everything he does makes sense. And so
that's not a joke. That's real.
No, that's real. That
cut me deep.
Yeah. So
he does feel like he does. It's like when Hillary Clinton had hot sauce in her bag. It's like a bunch of very pretend.
How you do, fellow kids?
It's
it's
the whole thing of I'm trying to win over people.
But just a lot of literal please clap. Just a bunch of just begging.
This is what you guys like, right?
Yeah.
That's kind of what it is.
I mean, I don't know. The expect them to get better question or to do better against the Raiders. I guess I can't get a feel for them. Are we about to? Should I accept that Russell Wilson is never going to be the player that he was? Or is this another situation where Nathaniel Hackett is a problem? It's like another Urban Meyer where we're ruining a quarterback or a team that could be better. But their defense is still pretty impressive.
Imagine
Nathaniel's staying away from that.
Imagine how bad it is to just be so bad at coaching that you get lumped in with Urban Meyer.
Right.
Who's obviously bad at coaching. But there's just so much more that also rises to the level of humiliation here.
So what is it? I need you to explain this to me. To be honest,
same. I don't know the answer.
I've watched their games, but I refuse to subject myself to all 22 of any of the games that they've played in. So help me out, Mr. Tice.
The sicko full of unidentified meats that I have watched this all 22, and it's a little bit of a Russ issue. It's the Russell Wilson offense, which is the joke now that everyone says, but it really is. I think that the first warning sign I got was when you look at that coaching staff and you see first-time offensive coordinator, first-time defensive coordinator, first-time offensive line coach. Okay, so where are the ideas coming from? So they're like, okay, Russ, what do you got? And Nathaniel Hackett comes in and says, hey, we're going to use this extensive empty package that Russ brought from Seattle. And if you look at the numbers, Russ is one of the worst quarterbacks in the league out of empty. And so it's don't listen to him. He's going to tell you what you want to hear. And no, this is not what you want to do. So he doesn't scramble anymore. He's only scrambled 5 times the whole year.
Right.
In 2020, he was scrambling 3 times a game. He's only scrambled 5 times this entire year. They have huge tendencies because they want to let him cook. So they go in the shotgun. And they don't run the ball out of the shotgun. They're the worst team out of the shotgun on first and second down, passing the ball. So it's what he is, we make jokes that he's short, can't see over the middle of the field, but why he's really good at throwing outside. and he's really good at pushing it vertically. But he wants to throw a quick game and be the Aaron Rodgers, like boom, 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 nickel and diming teams. He's not that. He's a big game hunter, but he's not doing that anymore. So it's kind of scary. He's targeting running backs more than anybody in the league, which is crazy. 30% of the time, it's like it's a weird. I actually don't hate the scheme they're running. Like the run game actually looks decent.
Really?
I don't hate it. It's not great, but it's okay. It's very NFL, yes, but he can't see anything. Like, and so they're not leaning into stuff that he's good at because they think he can do all these other things.
Do you think, as a big game hunter, that Russell Wilson is aware that he actually can't hunt big game in the same way anymore?
He has a rocket launcher and he thinks he has a sniper. I think that's what it kind of is. I think
well done. I didn't understand Pablo's question either, Nate, but good job making sense of it.
Spin.
It was like an analogy that it started out making sense that I was like, what?
Yeah.
No, but I guess the question is he delusional about his abilities now?
I think he is a little bit. I think he wants to sit in the back and go empty and go no huddle and call the shots. But watch the first game against Seattle. Every time they went no huddle, the guys couldn't get lined up because he can't communicate it. And so it's one of those where it's like, yes, it sounds good on a whiteboard, but as soon as the bullets start flying, he kind of isn't that. And I'm not saying he can still launch the shit out of the ball. Don't get me wrong. Like he can still launch these balls. He throws about 3 throws a game that are as good as anybody, but it's all the in-between stuff. It's the first and second down stuff as opposed to like when he's hunting down the field. So I think it's more that they listen to him and go, yeah, Russ, that's a great idea. And then actually call plays that aren't that. I think that's what they have to do.
Oh.
Speaking of passing, what were the hors d'oeuvres like?
Oh, they were
what
good.
What were the past appetizers like?
I mean, do you eat pigs in a blanket, or do you feel like some kinship with the tiny dogs because you are a giant hot dog man?
That's right.
All right, and I thought that was a size joke about him.
Oh,
so
no.
You're talking about me. It works in two ways.
That's how dare you accuse Debatable of double on.
They had like a lobster, kind of like a lobster cocktail that was really good.
Ooh.
That was very good. It was in Richmond,
fancy.
Virginia. Yeah, it was. Oh, it was a fancy one.
Well, and true to his play style, I suppose. High risk, high reward, right? Like
lobster, shellfish.
Yeah. In Wisconsin?
No, it was in Virginia.
No, he said it was in Virginia, where he's from.
Yeah.
Oh, Virginia.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
Well,
I don't really care about Russell Wilson, so can we move on? Like, it just hasn't been interesting at all to me this season.
What was their first dance song?
No. Get out of here.
That.
No.
I actually can't remember
We're
that.
done.
They did have a great band. Had a good band. I'll give them that.
Band over DJ.
Yeah.
Oh, you're making it worse.
The band was good though.
Come
it was
on.
Good. It's a lot of Motown hits.
You
it was fun.
go band in DJ. That's the combo. You have to transition.
You want a
singer,
band that is named after DJ. What Quad City DJs?
You want the singer for like the slow dance, the first dance and everything,
no.
and then you go to DJ.
Yeah, you got to transition.
I agree with that.
How do you can't like have a party
You
with a
can't-
live band?
How can a beat be dropped by a live band?
Yeah.
Is what you are asking.
Yeah, you have some performers,
Fair, I
and then
guess.
you transition to something that knock a little bit.
Yeah, not enough bass with a live band. I get it. I totally get it.
All right. What's up? This is
Russell
Ben
Wilson,
Zoomounts.
big 808s guy. Speaking of which, though, I'm hearing music faintly. I think we have the power to do this. Are we hearing music faintly entering the background that is signaling that Dave Tice has fulfilled his obligations as a friend and foe of Debatable, Alabaster?
We are. Thank you, Nate
Nice.
Tice, for making us much smarter and teaching us all about
What a joy.
Thank
Russell
you for
Wilson.
having me, guys.
What a joy.
Appreciate ya.
Confidential information
All right,
on the next
Nate.
president of the United States.
Yes.
What we just gave you.
Great
He's
job.
He's got 2 more years until he's eligible, so we'll know.
Great job. I'll have you back and drop Pablo. He thought he was gonna drop me.
I appreciate it, guys.
All right, Domonique, here he is. Too scared to wear a tie on this show anymore because we made fun of him last time. Kevin Clark, hello, and old Fred.
I had a great meeting with Kanye West a decade ago.
It wasn't a
And
meeting.
It was
Wait,
closer than
tell
you got.
tell the story now. We can't
He
just tease
came
our audience.
to a Knicks game, and I said hello, and he kind of grunted at me. How you doing? He was meeting Amari Stoudemire,
Huh?
and
Yeah.
and I said I met, kind of in passing, I met Kanye West. I said that to Domonique Foxworth. He said I did not meet Kanye West.
You didn't. That's not a meeting. A meeting is like a handshake, a dap, exchange of names. Kanye, you said hello to Kanye. That's fine.
He
when you
acknowledged
tell
my
people-
presence back.
That's not a meeting. Like I acknowledge
don't know
people's
where you
presence
draw
all the time.
line. When you're meeting with someone, you're in a conference room. Do you wait till like 3 minutes have elapsed and gone? It's like a baseball game with a rain delay. Okay, this is an official meeting now.
All right, guys, let's talk some football. And with this game, I want to know if you find the micro interesting or if you want to zoom out and take a long view at all this stuff. The first one, do you want to zoom in and talk about where the Chiefs and Bucs are right now because they're playing on Sunday night, or zoom out and talk about where these teams will be by the end of the season?
Ooh.
I feel like my answer is always zoom out. No matter what the question is, I think I always would rather zoom out than zoom in. I don't want to commandeer this topic, so somebody want to zoom in on it?
Domonique, you know I'm a zoom outy sort of guy.
Yeah.
I'm curious if Kevin Clark has a microscope though that he wants to put this thing underneath. Like, what are you strapping on like an old watch repairman sort of like monocle here, or what are you doing?
I was told to bring it today. Here are my notes. I have notes for zooming in and zooming out. I can zoom in, I can zoom out. It's a choose your own adventure book here in the notes.
All right, zoom us in. Zoom us in.
All right, so let's go to some numbers here, some stats. Tyreek Hill, 317 yards, 2 touchdowns. All of Patrick Mahomes' wide receivers right now, 430 yards, 2 touchdowns. The Chiefs have as good an offense as there is in the NFL, but it's a lot of option routes to Travis Kelce right now. And so from what I see, there's not, they're going to have to figure it out. I talked to Brett Veach, the GM, a couple months ago. He basically said that they're not going to try to replace Tyreek Hill. They're going to find MVS using some of his routes, Juju using the middle of the field, Hardman, those guys. It's going to be replacing Tyreek Hill by committee, but it's going to take a while, okay? So that's my zoom in. The zoom out is that none of this matters. It's that none of this matters because the good teams in an 18-week season now do not consider September to be all that important. Now, I think we got off track a couple of years ago because no one statistically has better September numbers than Patrick Mahomes, ever. Like, he is the king of September. But that's just incidental. He's doing that because he can. I think you look at this, the Chiefs lost at home last year in the AFC title game. The Bucs lost to the Rams in Tampa Bay. Like, I think these teams are saying, like, why are we trying to win 15 games instead of taking it easy, winning 12 games? Like, the bye isn't there anymore for the second seed, so it's a little bit different. Like, for me, I just don't know why you'd stress out about September. You use it as an extended training camp right now. I'm officially not worried. Domonique and I cracked the code the other day on Slow News Day with Tom Brady as far as he's not practicing on Wednesdays anymore. What we do is we do a hybrid work situation. We send some players to his backyard on Wednesday. And that's how we get there. But that's an October, November thing.
Come on.
Would you want Cole Beasley on your property?
Well, this is the question I have, is that it does seem to conflict a little bit. And first off, no. Second off, the theory that you have laid out, which I love, which is that there is this NBA style load management in the NFL that's quietly happening, right? I love this take. It's a take that after stealing it from you on Around the Horn before the first game of the Bills season. When
No. You stole from Domonique they don't run Josh Allen.
Yeah,
take,
he's a take taker. We accept that he's a take taker. But sorry, Pablo, finish up.
No, but I guess the question is, like, bringing in Cole Beasley, taking him in feels like a sign of desperation, doesn't it?
I mean, it's a Band-Aid until they get their receivers healthy.
Yeah.
I love that Kevin is ahead of the curve on this load management thing, but I guess the combination of adding one more game and taking away the bye
and adding an extra playoff team, adding extra playoff team,
and the general trend of home field advantage mattering less and less, all that together, I think could create the idea that this is okay. But at least in my view, that is so contradictory to football culture that it would take a lot more and a lot longer time for everyone to, or at least maybe it's not everyone, maybe the smart teams have already shifted that dynamic. It just feels so weird, the idea that football teams will go into games less prepared than they would, or with less of a focus on winning than they would. So I don't.
But that's Dominic.
I don't mean to say that you're wrong. It just is weird for me to hear, and it probably makes some good sense because as we always talk about, injuries are so like integral to how a football season turns out. And if you can try to do something to minimize that, then this is what you should do if you're a championship contending team.
I was in Cincinnati when Joe Burrow got appendix surgery. They were so unbothered by the idea that he wasn't going to play in the preseason. Now it turned out to be a bigger deal than we thought, and maybe we should have seen that coming. But coaches now don't view preseason games as anything. And that, to me, is the best evidence September is almost a wash for some of these top tier teams.
So just to clarify, though, because the question that Domonique raised is the one that I'm fascinated by, which is where do we see this manifest and how do we see this manifest, right? What you're suggesting, Kevin, is that it's not that they're like holding back on their plays.
Right.
It's that they're just not ready in the same way that they would have been with a full preseason.
That's my take on it. And, it's funny because before last year, Domonique, Matt Ryan was on my show that you've also been on. And I asked him about this because
we have referenced Slow News Day approximately a half dozen times.
He needs the help. He needs the help. Let's do it a few more. He needs
still
some people
above
to
you on
watch
Spotify.
it.
Still above you on Spotify. Although
you work for Spotify.
We fixed it. That's the benefits. I told you when I say
There's
Spotify has amazing benefits, that's what I mean. I mean benefits.
I want external review of what's going on.
Can we edit a conference room onto the screen that is Kevin Clark meeting all the people he's claimed to meet so far? Kanye West, Spotify executives, Joe Burrow's appendix.
I have Joe Burrow's appendix. Yes. Although I will say I tried to do.
Yep.
I'm going to do a Joe Burrow thing here. So Joe Burrow walked past me the day after his appendix surgery.
Did you meet him?
And I did my bro wink, which is how
What's
I
a bro wink?
Well, it's when someone's walking past you and you just give them
you gotta. Just gotta give a little.
God. Stop. What? That's my bro wink. If I'm unoccupied, I can just say, hey man, what's going on? What's going on, bro? To tie that all together. But if I'm occupied, and I was when Joe Burrow walked past me, gave him the bro wink, he did not look good, and that's when I knew he was going to have a rough September. He didn't respond.
You winked
to the bro wink.
at a Joe Burrow whose appendix was in need of surgery.
Did not respond to the bro wink.
I wanted to be. I started with being impressed by how I asked you to zoom in, and somehow you zoomed out further than even I had wanted to zoom out. And we're talking about like the overall ethos of the NFL shifting from what it was previously to now a little bit more emphasis on late in the season, less on beginning of the season. But somehow we ended up at you flirting with Joe Burrow. Like, I mean, there's no other way to put it.
With literally zooming in on the eyeball of Kevin Clark.
That's right. One thing on Matt Ryan is that he said that this is the whole thing that was reason I brought up the story, is that he said you will not notice the load management era because it won't be with quarterbacks. It will be with defensive ends. It will be with defensive tackles. It will be with rotations. It will be with cornerbacks. It will be this guy has a hamstring. We're going to hold him out on Sunday. It's that. We don't notice because it's not Tua sitting out. It's not Matt Ryan sitting out. It's not Mahomes sitting out. So there will be a load management era of football. But we won't notice it. It will be under our feet.
Why got to punctuate it with a wink.
Oh, yeah.
There you go. I'm all in on the wink now. I'm all in.
You sold it.
That thing
you
worked.
sold that wink.
That
oh my
thing
God.
worked.
He looked kind of off to the side. It was casual.
All right, I'm gonna practice and add it to my repertoire. Never mind.
I now feel less powerful.
Guys, I think we zoomed out a little too far. We zoomed out past the Bucs and Chiefs season to now it's just the concept of the 17-game schedule. So I think it's time to move on. I have another zoom in, zoom out. Do you want to zoom in on the Chargers' slow start? Or zoom out on the decision to play Justin Herbert through rib injuries?
I feel like we're in the golden era of injuries that clearly can get worse that we say can't get worse. Like Jameis Winston, every time there's an injury report, it's like, he's got a transverse fracture in his back. He's wearing like an extra Band-Aid. He's good to go. And it's like, what? He's got what? And he's doing what for it? That was the report last week. Jake Glazer was like, no risk of further damage. Well, he's playing in an NFL game, so I doubt it. All right, so a couple things. J.C. Jackson's been banged up since training camp. Joey Bosa's on IR. Rashawn Slater's on IR. For me, this Herbert thing is an overcorrection by Mr. Brandon Staley. Last year, he was new age guy. He was fourth down guy. He was analytics guy. He was players coach guy. This year, he's lost the second most expected points on fourth down. The worst is actually the Chiefs because they have a backup kicker and a guy who's never returned punts before that doesn't know what he's doing. I think that he realized that in order to, I'm going to zoom out for a second. In order for Brandon Staley's, as we say, crap to work, as Billy Bean would say, you need to win almost immediately. You needed to prove it last year. We're going to go for it on 4th down. We're going to do all this stuff, right? And they didn't. They couldn't even tie in the last game of the season. They didn't make the playoffs. And I think he's become a more conventional coach. He's been bullied into becoming a more conventional coach. He's been bullied into being the tough guy. And I don't think that's correct, but it buys you extra time. It's almost, we saw Chip Kelly get run out of pro football.
Kevin, you really believe that the backlash that Brandon Staley has received after being the nerd darling,
yes,
it's almost like he got winked at by Bill Barnwell, and now he's just shook. He's like, "No, I got."
No, he got winked at. It wasn't Barnwell. He got winked at by like Mike Ditka, and then now he's like, "I'm the tough guy now." Like he was winked at by Barnwell.
He's been okay. So he's been radicalized.
Now he's running the Oklahoma drill in his backyard, which he's gonna sign Mike Allstott.
This is sad.
It's all sad. It's the Chargers football. What's it supposed to be?
Is he in trouble? Like, I feel like he got a head coaching job off the strength of 1 year as a defensive coordinator, which is rare and does not happen to other defensive coordinators who've had equally successful resumes. Is he right man? Is he the right man for this job? With Justin Herbert there, I feel like the patience for having the right coach is not. They don't have any fans though. I was gonna say the patience won't be there, but there is no one to rise up. It's just general football fans. Like, please don't waste Justin Herbert. Please get him to the playoffs for us, please.
Well, so here's my take on that. So first of all, John Oran from Sports Business Journal does a great job. He said,
"Did you just point to him?"
He did. He's got a lot of moves.
What are these moves?
That wasn't for you. It was for John Oran. I just told you who the point was for.
Where are you pointing?
To the internet where he is.
Where's the internet?
It's outside.
Yeah, hold on. We're gonna edit John Oran of Sports Business Journal into this frame to make all of this make a little bit more sense.
So he reported this week that a generic NFL game in Los Angeles, it's like congressional races, right? Generic ballot. A generic NFL game in Los Angeles gets significantly higher ratings than a Chargers game on CBS. So that's where we're starting. So there's not the heat is going to come from people like Domonique and I and Bill Barnwell and Mike Ditka and Mike Allstott. And so the heat's going to
put all of those on screen.
Come from the external world and not maybe the Chargers fan base. I do think they do have fans, and you see them at training camp and stuff like that. They do have some fans, but it's just not. It's not not exactly Nebraska. Okay. Having said that, I think that there had to be an offensive plan. If you're a defensive coordinator, and Joe Lombardi is not it. They're running really basic concepts. They're letting Justin Herbert bail them out all the time. So for me, I think you could have had a successful tenure if you had a better plan on the offensive side of the ball, Domonique. I agree. It was a thin resume for Brandon Staley. He gives great press conferences. He talks a bit like a podcaster. He gives great answers to questions. There's a reason the media loves him. And I think he could have gotten off on the right foot if there was a better offensive plan. He just couldn't do it. Joe Lombardi's not the guy for Justin Herbert. If you get the keys to the kingdom, you got to prove you belong. You can't Ryan Grigson this. He had Andrew Luck ruin the whole deal. You see it a little bit right now with Joe Burrow. He's getting the crap knocked out of him. You got to protect your guy. You got to protect your second-year superstar. And the offensive plan, the injuries, it's just not coming together in Los Angeles, Domonique.
Truly everybody bullying Brandon Staley, Alabaster, which you can relate to, I would imagine, on some deeper level.
Are you projecting what you can relate to?
Not at all.
Me now?
Yeah,
nope.
Exactly.
I hate that I gave you that. I hate that I gave you that.
Oh, man. Get in the locker, Pablo.
Hurt people. Okay.
All right, we got one more. Do you guys want to zoom in on whether the Giants or Bears are a more fraudulent 2-1 play this weekend, or do you want to zoom out on which QB is apparently more disappointing so far, Daniel Jones or Justin Fields?
Can the answer be no?
Speaking of takes that we're all dug in on, what are we?
I mean, we could talk about the quarterbacks. I guess it's more interesting.
Can we raise the banner for 2-1 for the Giants and the Bears? Is that a thing we can do? Just like celebrate that you're winning.
I think the quarterbacks are interesting. The idea that quarterbacks cannot overcome their surroundings is one that seems like it's on the fringe, but it's in the center of debatable. It's something that we firmly believe in, is if you put a quarterback in a bad situation, most of them will underachieve. And I think it's fair to look at Daniel Jones and be like confused about the level of quarterback that he is. I think it's clear that he's not great. It's possible that he can be average.